Claire Murphy had been a nurse for 6 years, but she'd never forgotten the lesson her grandmother taught her when she was 8 years old. We're put on this earth to help each other, and sometimes helping means giving something that costs us dearly. Standing outside room 412 on a quiet Tuesday morning, Claire had no idea she was about to live that lesson in ways she'd never imagined. The patient inside was named Adrian Castellano, 32 years old, admitted 3 weeks ago with acute kidney failure. Claire had been assigned to his care rotation, and from the first day, something about him had struck her as deeply sad. He was handsome in that polished way of men who wore expensive watches and custom suits, though now he wore only a hospital gown. His dark hair was slightly too long, falling across his forehead as he stared out the window at the city below. What struck Claire most was how alone he seemed. No visitors, no flowers, no cards on the nightstand. Just Adrian and the steady beep of monitors tracking a body that was slowly failing him. "Good morning," Claire said, entering with her usual warmth. "How are we feeling today?" Adrian turned from the window, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "We are feeling like we've had this conversation before. I'm fine. The same kind of fine as yesterday." His tone wasn't unkind, just tired. Claire had learned to read the difference. She checked his vitals, noted his fluid intake, asked the standard questions. As she worked, she noticed a business magazine someone had left on his tray table. The cover featured a stern-looking man in front of a glass building. The headline read, "Castellano Industries, Building the Future." "Is that you?" she asked, nodding toward the magazine. Adrian glanced at it, and something like pain crossed his face. "That's my father. I'm supposed to be like him someday. Run the company. Build the empire." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Hard to build much of anything from a hospital bed. "Family business?" Claire asked gently. "Family obligation. My father started with nothing and built a fortune. He has very specific ideas about legacy, about what it means to be a Castellano. I was raised to be a successor, groomed for it since I could walk." "But that's not what you want," Claire said. It wasn't a question. Adrian looked at her with surprise, as if no one had ever simply stated the obvious before. "No, I wanted to teach. Literature, maybe history. Something that matters in ways that can't be measured in quarterly reports." He shifted against his pillows. "My father said that was a waste of potential. We had a falling out about it 2 years ago. Haven't spoken since." "I'm sorry," Claire said, and meant it. "Don't be. I made my choice. I walked away from the company, from the money, from all of it. Been living on my own, working as a substitute teacher, try to figure out who I am without the Castellano name." He gestured around the room. "Turns out I'm just a guy with bad kidneys and no health insurance." The pieces fell into place for Claire. Why he was alone. Why no one visited. Pride or principle, or both, had cut him off from the resources that could save him. "You're on the transplant list?" she asked. "For whatever good it does. My blood type isn't common. They said it could be years. I probably don't have years." Claire finished her rounds and left, but Adrian's words stayed with her. That night, lying in her small apartment, she thought about his situation, about being young and sick and alone, about having family who could help, but choosing principle over survival. The next morning, she requested Adrian's file and checked his blood type. Then she checked her own medical records from when she donated blood last year. They matched. Claire sat at her kitchen table for a long time, staring at those 2 letters and that plus sign. She was 29 years old and healthy. She'd been a nurse long enough to know the risks of donation, and also to know they were relatively small. She'd also been a nurse long enough to know that kidneys were precious, that people died waiting for them. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Sometimes helping means giving something that costs us dearly." Claire made an appointment with the transplant coordinator. The evaluation process took 2 weeks. Physical tests, psychological screening, endless questions about her motives. Was she being coerced? Did she expect compensation? Was she sure she understood the implications? "I'm sure," she told him each time. "He's my patient. He needs help. I can provide it. That's enough reason." They asked if Adrian knew. "No," Claire said, "and I prefer to keep it that way until after the surgery. I don't want him to feel obligated or guilty. This is my choice." When the transplant team finally approached Adrian with the news that a living donor had been found, Claire watched from outside his room. She saw his face transform, hope flooding features that had been resigned to death. She saw him ask questions she couldn't hear, saw him break down crying, covering his face with both hands. The surgery was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In that time, Claire continued caring for Adrian, though she'd been taken off his direct rotation to avoid conflicts. Still, she checked on him during breaks, brought him books from the hospital library, sat with him on the nights when sleep wouldn't come and fear felt too heavy to carry alone. "I can't believe someone would do this for me," he said one evening. "A complete stranger giving me a kidney. It doesn't seem real." "Maybe they're not as much a stranger as you think," Claire said carefully. "Maybe there's someone who sees worth in you that you've forgotten how to see in yourself." Adrian studied her face. "You know something. I know that you matter. That teaching kids about literature and history matters. That staying true to yourself, even when it costs you, everything matters. The world needs people like you." He reached for her hand. Claire hesitated, then let him take it. His grip was weak, but earnest. "Will you stay?" he asked. "After the surgery, when I wake up, will you be there?" "I'll be there," she promised. The surgery took 8 hours. Claire woke in recovery, feeling like she'd been split in half, which in a sense she had. The pain was manageable, but the strange sense of absence was harder to process. Part of her was somewhere else now, keeping someone else alive. When she was finally wheeled to her room, she asked about Adrian. "The transplant was successful," a doctor told her. "He's in ICU but stable. His body accepted the kidney beautifully. You saved his life." Claire closed her eyes and let tears of relief slide down her temples. Her grandmother had been right. The cost was high, but some gifts were worth everything they took from you. 3 days later, when they were both stable enough, the transplant coordinator arranged for them to meet. Adrian had been told the donor's identity that morning. When Claire was wheeled into his room, he was sitting up in bed, and the look on his face was one she'd remember for the rest of her life. Wonder, gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite name. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Claire, why would you do this?" She prepared a dozen answers. Practice speeches about duty and compassion and the Hippocratic Oath.